Hello everyone, my name is Gabriel Zapata, and in this presentation I will be talking about the causal attributions of success and failure found during the transition to higher education, specifically attributions from first-year English language students. Now, moving on to the following slides, we can see that this presentation is called Attributions to Learning English in the Transition to Higher Education. This is the contents. First of all, we're gonna review the theoretical framework, then the objective, the research questions, the methodology, the results, and the discussion and conclusions. First of all, this is the attribution theory. In this presentation, I used the attribution theory, which is basically, according to Peacock, attribution refers to the reasons of success or failure resulting from people asking themselves why questions. It is actually an explanation for an event of behavior, and it could be internal or external process. Also, Weiner says that in this case, students have unexpected and negative academic outcomes that are commonly found in the first year of university. And also, Weiner suggests that ability, effort, task difficulty, and luck are one of the most key factors that influence people's achievement. Moving on to the transition from high school to university. In this case, the transition involves two critical stages. The first one will be the early process of admission in university, in which students create their first impressions and also expectations. For example, regarding the quality of the university, some students may think that they have high expectations about the university. And then the second stage involves the first days and weeks after the enrollment to the university. Also, the transition from high school to university involves unfamiliar or unpredictable conditions that students face during their first year. This one includes more frequent failure, unfamiliar learning tasks, ineffective instruction, stringent grading practices, critical career choices, and new social networks. Also, the transition from high school to university is a process that may influence and determine success, failure, and school desertion. Now, moving on to the objective. In this case, the objective of this project was to describe the influence of causal attributions on first-year English language learners on their achievement and expectations of success that emerged from their transition from high school to university. In this project, we used two research questions. The first one involves the attributions from first-year English language students associated to the transition from high school to university towards English language learning. And the second question involves beliefs of causes of success and failure and explanations towards English language achievement. Moving on to the methodology, this is a qualitative exploratory research which used semi-structured interviews based on literature about attribution and transition from high school to university. Participants were 17 on-campus students, men and women, who had just finished their first semester in Lengua Inglesa major from the Universidad de Quintana. And this is a summary of the topics that were used for the interviews. There were self-appraisal of success and failure questions, attribution of success and failure, transition stages from Tinto, and unfamiliar conditions. Since we were looking for students' language achievement, there was a classification for the students that took part of this project. There were the failing students, the ones that obtained less than 7 points as final grades, the average students, the ones who obtained from 7 to 7.9 as final grades, and the passing students, the ones that obtained from 8 to 10 as final grades. And as you can see, we used 3 different codes with numbers to identify them. In this map, we can see the actual results and divisions for the categories that resulted from the interviews. First of all, there were the first stage of the transition that involved the major selection, expectation of the university, and the major. Then there were the second stage of the transition, in which there were expectations after enrollment and the consequences of the major selection. Then the unfamiliar conditions, which resulted in increased pressure to excel, ineffective instruction, and stringent grading practices, new social networks. And also, 2 new categories were identified, which were probability of failure, new learning environment. At the end, there were the attributions, that every part and every category in this project involves attributions. Moving on to the results and answering the first research question, we can see that there were several attributions and beliefs and opinions about the categories of the transition. In the first stage, there were the major selection. Overall, Lenguas increases the possibilities to find a job and is a good option to learn English. Then, prior expectations about the university and major attributions. The students said that the university major program is adequate. Lenguas is boring and difficult. The university is not as good as other universities. It is important to note that these categories involved perceptions and actual attributions for a result. In this case, the learning achievement of the students. Moving on to the second stage of the transition, and still answering the research question 1, the expectations after enrollment involved negative expectations, which changed to positive ones. That means that all of the previous expectations from the first stage changed to positive. Also, the consequences for choosing lengua inglesa. In this case, the student said that the major is helpful to learn English, lengua inglesa is motivating, and the major program is not what I was expecting. Next, there were the unfamiliar conditions. In this case, the increased pressure to excel involved the following attributions: external pressure to excel, classmates' level of English, the teacher, and family, and internal pressure, commitment to improve in English. This means that students who had whether external or internal pressure attributed that pressure to these attributions. Second, ineffective instruction. Students believe that teachers' methodologies are not beneficial because they just worked in the student's book. Also, the teacher's methodologies are adequate, which is basically a positive attribution, and the teacher was motivating. Then, the stringent grading practices. In this case, the teacher grading criteria are demanding. This means that students believe that there were an excessive amount of assignments, and also the final exam was not adequate. Then, new social networks involved classmates' high level of English, social adaptation problems, and classmates' low level of English. In this case, the attributions were mostly negative. This means that participants believed that their new social networks in the university were not adequate or helpful for them. Moving on to the emerging categories. First, probability of failure involved the following attributions. In this case, students believed that there was a probability of failure because of poor knowledge of English, not liking the major, lack of learning skills, teachers' grading criteria, demanding level of English. Also, the new learning environment, which was basically a sense of academic responsibility. Answering research question 2, this was the actual attributions of success and failure. Attributions of success were the teacher, the final exam, effort, and delivering assignments. Attributions for failure were not delivering assignments, lack of English knowledge, the major curriculum, lack of effort, and the final exam. Also, for expectation of success, low expectations involve these attributions, for example, poor English knowledge, and high expectations, for example, an optimism to learn English. Also, self-students' appraisal of success. Unsuccessful participants believe that they were unsuccessful because of insufficient learning level of English, and final grades, and shyness. And students who believe that they were successful believe that the amount of English language acquired, effort, and the English level was easy. Now, moving on to the discussion and the actual conclusions of this presentation, I would like to highlight that results indicate that every element of the transition influenced in some way to the learning achievement of the students. Concerning the two main stages of the transition from high school to university, the students were able to form images, opinions about the university and the major, which is lengua inglesa, so they could form this kind of beliefs about their attributions, and then to form to influence their actual learning achievement. Unfamiliar conditions, such as pressure to excel, are believed to be unfavorable or negative for first-year English language learners. However, this project concludes that that's not the case. Actually, for the majority of the students, some of the positive attributions were from the actual unfamiliar conditions, such as the teacher, which was seen as a motivation. There were also negative attributions, such as not delivering assignments, that actually influence the motivation of the students, and also not passing the final exam. Elements that were actually emerged during the teachers' grading criteria, which also influenced in some way the students' views of the university and the major itself. The emerging categories, which were probability of failure and a new learning environment, were seen as this part of the beliefs of the students, for sure attributions, that indicates that there were some kind of elements that make the students believe that they will fail the course. However, there were also elements of these two new categories that also helped the students in order to pass the course. In conclusion, all of these elements and attributions found during the transition to higher education were for sure an influence for the first year students. Some of the attributions that were most likely to be encountered by the students were the teacher, the assignments, the exam, effort, and the grading criteria of the teacher, which is also immersed on the attributions of not delivering assignments and the exam. Overall, the attributions found during the transition from higher education molded students' views of their actual learning achievement, in this case from the second language learning, which was English. And finally, attributions also influenced students' expectations, specifically at the beginning of the course and after enrolling the university. And that's the end of this presentation. Thank you for watching.